The story begins with a South Korean intelligence agent named Joe, who is preparing to gather information about narcotics being smuggled into his country. To do that, he heads to a brothel, where a woman has agreed to become his informant. Joe pretends to be a customer, so he will not attract attention. Not long after he finally meets her, he records the meeting and uses a pulse detector to monitor whether she is telling the truth or lying. Before long, the woman gives him a bracelet as a gift, because Joe is the first man who has come to see her without wanting to sleep with her. A little later, the woman begins telling her story. She explains that she was once sent to Vladivostok, a city in Russia, for work. She left behind her husband and child in hopes of building a better life. But the agent who sent her there turned out to be operating illegally and was eventually arrested by the Russian government. Long story short, she was deported from Russia. But on the way home, men working for the Russian Mafia kidnapped her, planning to sell her and turn her into a slave. They also injected her with narcotics, so she would be too weak to resist and forced to obey every order. Hearing all of this leaves Joe heartbroken, and he immediately wants to expose the human trafficking operation. But his superior orders him to stay focused on gathering information about the drug smuggling route. That puts Joe in a difficult position because to him, every crime involved needs to be brought down. Not long after, the pimp tells Joe his time is up and forces him to leave. Joe quickly asks his boss to send backup, but the request is denied because his mission has not been officially authorized. That only makes the situation more frustrating because Joe knows he cannot do anything to save the woman. In the end, he walks away, but only physically. Deep down, he cannot ignore what is happening, especially knowing the woman is about to be tortured. Joe cannot just stand there while his informant is beaten and injected with more drugs to keep her under control. At that point, he snaps. He charges in and brutally takes down the men attacking her one by one. He does get caught off guard for a moment when one of the gangsters attacks him and injures his leg. But Joe quickly recovers and beats the man unconscious. Soon, more people rush in, ready to fight him. His superior warns him not to use his gun because it could make things even worse, so Joe has no choice but to take them on with his bare hands. He keeps throwing punches until no one is left standing. After that, Joe rushes the woman back to headquarters so she can be treated as quickly as possible, since she has already been injected with a massive amount of narcotics. Once they arrive, the team does everything they can to save her. They keep trying, but the overdose is too severe, and her blood vessels have already ruptured. One of Joe's colleagues attempts to restart her heart, but no matter how hard they try, the woman cannot be saved. This is human. A week later, Joe and his teammate return to Korea to report everything they have learned about the drug smuggling operation. Joe also reveals that many North Korean women have become victims of human trafficking at the hands of the Russian Mafia. Based on the information they gathered, he explains that the crimes appear to involve officials from the North Korean government as well. Because of that, Joe is ordered to go to Russia and uncover the entire operation. The next day, Joe arrives in Russia and meets a contact at an Asian restaurant. While he is there, he is approached by a waitress from North Korea named Seo Hwa. She immediately recognizes that Joe is from South Korea. Even so, Joe asks her to continue serving him as usual, despite the ongoing conflict between their countries. 5 months later, the story shifts to a broker who is helping a young North Korean woman escape. She wants to flee to China because she can no longer endure the harsh reality of her government. However, the broker takes her toward the Russian border instead, claiming it is a safer route. As soon as they arrive, everything takes a dark turn. Without warning, they are forced into a vehicle. It becomes clear that they are being sold into slavery by a Russian mafia group led by a man named Alexei. The situation gets even worse when the broker offers narcotics to Alexei, hoping to make an extra profit. In the middle of this, one of the women tries to escape. Without hesitation, Alexei shoots her. He shows no mercy, continuing to fire until she is completely lifeless, making it clear that no one is allowed to get away. The following day, the broker is seen relaxing at home with his partner, thinking everything is fine. But suddenly, someone is already inside his house. Out of nowhere, he is attacked with dart arrows. He tries to fight back, but the attacker overwhelms him and plants multiple darts into his body. The attacker is revealed to be Park Ji-yeon, a North Korean intelligence agent who has come to uncover the human trafficking operation. Park Ji-yeon takes the broker to a separate room for interrogation, determined to find out who is behind the entire operation. But before he can get answers, they are interrupted by the North Korean ambassador to Russia, a man named Chi Seong. He questions why Park Ji-yeon acted so quickly without coordination. Since the broker is already captured, Chi Seong decides to punish him by forcing him to write down everything he has done in his life, from the beginning until now. The broker remains silent, refusing to cooperate, until Chi Seong escalates the situation and forces him to comply through intimidation. Unbeknownst to anyone, Park Gaeon secretly plants a recording device, just in case, since part of his mission is also to keep an eye on Chi Seong. Not long after, Chi Seong invites Park Gaeon to lunch, saying there is something important to discuss. During that meeting, it becomes clear that Chi Seong already knows Park Gaeon was sent to monitor him. He even tries to recruit Park Gaeon to work together, but Park Gaeon calmly refuses, staying committed to exposing the human trafficking network. By coincidence, the person who serves Park Gaeon during that meal is none other than Seo Hwa. The moment he sees her, everything stops for him. It is revealed that they once had a relationship, but it ended when Seo Hwa chose to leave and work in Russia. Seeing Seo Hwa again brings back a flood of memories for Park Gaeon, especially when he watches her sing. He still cannot let go of the past because to him, she has always been the one. But no matter how strong his feelings are, he knows it is not something he can easily return to, so he forces himself to bury those emotions. In the middle of that, Park Gaeon receives a call from his colleague with shocking news. The broker they captured earlier has died under mysterious circumstances. Without wasting any time, Park Gaeon immediately brings Chi Seong with him to check the scene. When they arrive, Park Gaeon examines the body and is clearly frustrated, realizing that this will make his investigation much harder. Chi Seong explains that the broker did not finish writing his statement, as if he was deliberately hiding the identity of the people behind the trafficking operation. Park Gaeon tries to figure out what really happened, but Chi Seong seems to be hiding something. He even suggests that Park Gaeon might have to return to North Korea, since there are no more leads to follow. After Chi Seong leaves, Park Gaeon checks the recording device he planted earlier, but it has been damaged. That immediately raises suspicion toward Chi Seong's men, because they should have been able to prevent what happened. Now, Park Gaeon has no choice but to find another way to continue his mission. The scene then shifts to Seo Hwa, who heads to a hotel to meet a client. It turns out that besides working at the restaurant, she has been selling herself to afford expensive medicine for her mother. She has no other option and is forced into that situation. But unexpectedly, Joe shows up. He approaches her with an offer to become his informant in order to expose both the drug trafficking and the human trafficking network. Joe begins recording the meeting and sets up a pulse detector to monitor her responses. He promises to provide her with medicine, money, and even arrange for her mother to be taken to Seoul for proper treatment. As the conversation continues, Seo Hwa hands over a sample of narcotics that are being distributed, part of a larger scheme to damage the younger generation in South Korea. Joe then shows her a photo of Alexei, who is rumored to be working with Chi Seong in both drug smuggling and human trafficking. Seo Hwa explains that some of her friends were recently sent back to North Korea, but their families have not heard from them since. One of them was even the previous informant, who is now dead. After the meeting ends, Seo Hwa prepares to leave and collects medicine for her mother. Before she goes, she gives Joe some of her hair, so it looks like she actually met a client. Joe also gives her a small gift, knowing her birthday is coming soon. Not long after, Im steps in to complete the setup. She messes up the bed and places Seo Hwa's hair around the room to make everything look convincing. At the same time, she warns Joe not to act too quickly. There is still a chance that Seo Hwa could be lying, especially since her heart rate was unstable during the test. Everything needs to be handled carefully, both for the success of the mission and for Seo Hwa's safety. Meanwhile, Seo Hwa returns to the restaurant where she works, only to find Park Gaeon already waiting for her. He asks to talk, revealing that he has been searching for her all this time and wants to take her back home. But Seo Hwa refuses. She says she has grown used to life in Russia and asks him to leave her alone. At the same time, Joe and Im head back to the hotel to gather more information about Park Gaeon. Joe becomes increasingly curious about who he really is, especially since he seems highly trained. He also starts to suspect that Park Gaeon might be working under Chi Seong. Im then shows Joe a recording of Park Gaeon meeting Seo Hwa, and it becomes clear that the two share a past relationship. Joe notices something unusual. Park Gaeon appears extremely skilled, but when he is with Seo Hwa, he lets his guard down. Even more concerning, someone else was secretly recording that meeting. Joe realizes he needs to dig deeper. Joe begins to consider pulling Seo Hwa out immediately, worried that her movements might already be drawing suspicion. He does not want history to repeat itself, and he is determined to keep his promise to bring her back safely. But Im warns him not to rush, because acting too quickly could put all of them in danger. They argue for a moment, but in the end, Joe decides to follow Im's advice. Elsewhere, Park Gaeon is left shaken after being rejected by Seo Hwa. He never expected her to push him away like that, especially when he still loves her deeply. Trying to deal with the pain, he spends the night smoking heavily and drinking. What he does not realize is that he has been under surveillance by Chi Seong this entire time. The next morning, Park Gaeon suddenly wakes up to find strangers in his room. He immediately fights back, taking them down one by one. It turns out they are Chi Seong's men, sent to bring him to the embassy for an important matter. Not long after, Park Gaeon meets with Chi Seong, who presents him with surveillance footage of Seo Hwa entering a hotel room to meet clients. Over the past month, she has been visiting the same hotel repeatedly. What stands out is that there are always two people entering the adjacent room at the same time. Even more suspicious, Seo Hwa shows a gesture of respect when leaving, even though the supposed client is already outside. From this pattern, Chi Seong concludes that someone else must be involved behind the scenes. Further investigation reveals that the hotel rooms are connected by a hidden door. These visits have been happening almost every week, and Seo Hwa always meets the same person. When Park Gaeon asks why he is being shown this evidence, Chi Seong explains his suspicion. He believes Seo Hwa may have defected and is now working with South Korea. Under the law, that means Park Gaeon is responsible for arresting her and sending her back to North Korea. Not long after, Joe realizes that Chi Seong's men have gone to Seo Hwa's residence. Without hesitation, he rushes out, fearing she's about to be captured. If that happens, not only will Seo Hwa be in danger, but the entire operation to expose the network could collapse. Joe tries to ask him for help, but she refuses to get involved. With no other option, Joe decides to handle it on his own. Not long after, Park Gaeon is seen working alongside Chi Seong's men, searching through every room of the North Korean workers, looking for any sign of betrayal. When he finally faces Seo Hwa, he tries to persuade her to admit that she has been working with a South Korean agent. It puts him in a painful position because he is bound by the law, yet the person he is interrogating is someone he still cares about. No matter what, Seo Hwa is going to be sent back, and that almost certainly means punishment. At the same time, Chi Seong's men discover a bundle of US dollars hidden in Seo Hwa's room. That alone is enough to label her a traitor. Park Gaeon is clearly shaken by this, but there is nothing he can do. With a heavy heart, Seo Hwa is taken away for further interrogation. She is brought to a secret facility where she is ordered to write down her entire life story from childhood until now. After reading what she wrote, Chi Seong is not convinced. He forces her to write it again, demanding that every detail match exactly. Unaware of this, Joe is secretly tapping into their location, trying to find out what is happening to Seo Hwa. An hour later, Seo Hwa finishes writing again. But once more, Chi Seong notices inconsistencies and becomes certain that she is lying. He pressures her to repeat the process, making it clear that any difference will lead to punishment. Each time he checks her writing, the signs of deception only become more obvious. Exhausted and dehydrated, Seo Hwa asks for water. Instead, Chi Seong orders Park Gaeon to pour water over her. Park Gaeon has no choice but to follow the command, even as it clearly pains him to do so. Chi Seong then approaches Seo Hwa, wearing the gloves that Joe had given her earlier. From there, he makes it clear that he already knows she has been meeting with a South Korean agent. With that, he decides she will be sent back to face the consequences. As Chi Seong prepares to leave, Park Gaeon tries to stop him, but the difference in their authority leaves him powerless. Once Chi Seong is gone, Park Gaeon attempts to convince the other agents to help him investigate the South Korean operative working with Seo Hwa. However, they refuse, saying they have no orders to do so. Frustration builds, but Park Gaeon has no control over the situation. Meanwhile, Joe secretly follows the vehicle carrying Seo Hwa. He quickly realizes they are not heading to the port as expected, but somewhere else entirely. That raises his suspicion, and he knows he cannot afford to lose them. Soon, Joe witnesses Chi Seong meeting with none other than Alexei, the Russian Mafia leader. Carefully, Joe captures photos as proof that Chi Seong is directly involved in human trafficking and drug distribution. When they leave, Joe immediately follows them. He watches as Alexei enters a building, which clearly serves as a hidden facility where the women are being held before being sold. Without hesitation, Joe prepares for an assault. He gears up with a bulletproof vest and weapons, ready to take down everyone inside and rescue Seo Hwa. At the same time, Park Gaeon heads to Joe's residence, determined to confront him. There he clashes with Im in a fierce fight, as she refuses to reveal Joe's location. Park Gaeon eventually overpowers her and threatens to break her bones if she does not tell him where Joe is. Unexpectedly, Joe reaches out to Park Geon, knowing that he is Seo Hua's former lover. Joe explains that he is trying to rescue her before she is sold. At first, Park Jae-on does not believe him. But once Joe provides proof of Chi-Seong's involvement, everything changes. Without wasting another second, Park Jae-on rushes out, determined to save Seo Hua. At the same time, Seo Hua's mother is being forced to testify that both Park Jae-on and Seo Hua have defected to South Korea. With that statement, Chi-Seong now has legal grounds to eliminate Park Jae-on. He cannot afford to let the truth come out, so he moves quickly to silence him. Elsewhere, Seo Hua is being prepared to be sold. She is placed inside a display box labeled as a high-grade product. Before that, she is about to be dressed up, but she resists with everything she has. Alexei steps in immediately and injects her with narcotics to calm her down. Outside, Joe prepares to move in. However, Alexei's men are already waiting for him. Carefully, Joe studies their positions and plans his attack. The moment he makes his move, a firefight breaks out. He takes cover behind a pillar while returning fire. Even though he is heavily outnumbered, Joe manages to push forward, closing the distance and taking down his enemies one by one. Meanwhile, Park Gaeon is being chased by Chi-Seong's men. Refusing to let him interfere, they pursue him relentlessly. Park Gaeon speeds through the streets trying to break through, but he is met with gunfire from multiple directions. The pressure keeps building, yet he refuses to back down. Thinking quickly, he turns on his headlights to blind his pursuers, giving him just enough advantage to fight back and escape. At the same time, Joe pushes deeper into the building, searching for Seo Hua. The number of enemies begins to overwhelm him, especially as his ammunition runs low. But then, something unexpected happens. Seo Hua regains consciousness and starts fighting back as well. She takes down several of the Mafia members without hesitation. Joe continues to move carefully, attacking when he can and conserving his bullets. As more enemies rush in, he throws a flashbang and uses the moment to eliminate everyone around him. The fight is far from over. Joe is attacked again, but he manages to hold his ground until he finally comes face to face with Seo Hua. For a brief moment, he freezes, and that hesitation costs him as he is hit by enemy fire. Even so, he forces himself to endure the pain and keeps fighting until every last threat is taken down. Moments later, Joe discovers rows of women being held, all of them waiting to be sold. As he tries to open one of the containers, he is attacked once again. That is when he realizes the box is reinforced with bulletproof glass. With no choice, he pulls back and takes cover. Just when the situation seems impossible, help arrives. And this time, it comes from none other than Park Gaeon. At first, there is clear tension between Joe and Park Gaeon. They still do not fully trust each other, both keeping their weapons ready. Joe quickly explains that Seo Hua is his informant, and that everything he is doing is to expose the human trafficking operation. Before they can settle things, they are attacked again. With no other choice, they put their differences aside and start working together to save her. Seo Hua also joins the fight, managing to take down one of Alexei's men. Joe and Park Jae-on take cover behind a bulletproof container, but Alexei and his men use it to their advantage, pushing it forward as a shield while continuing their attack. The pressure keeps building, and both of them are pushed to their limits. Then Joe spots a small opening and takes it, striking back and eliminating the remaining enemies. In the end, only Alexei is left standing, and even then, he is still strong enough to fight back, landing a shot that hits Joe in the leg. Park Gaeon immediately steps in to help. When Alexei finally runs out of bullets, Park Gaeon seizes the moment and charges in. He tries to stab him, but Alexei is incredibly strong, making it hard to bring him down. Just in time, Joe steps in and fires a shot that hits Alexei, but as he prepares to finish it, his gun runs empty. The situation shifts again as Alexei fights back. With everything they have left, Joe and Park Gaeon work together to take him down. Even then, Alexei continues to overpower them, pushing Park Gaeon toward a deadly situation. Park Gaeon holds on as long as he can, until Joe comes in from behind and finally ends the fight. At last, Alexei is defeated. After that, Joe rushes over to Seo Hua, relieved to see that she is still alive. He helps her get back on her feet, making sure she is safe. Seo Hua then tends to the burns on Park Gaeon's hands. Not long after, Joe and Park Gaeon begin leading the other women out, staying alert in case any enemies are still nearby. But just as they step outside, Park Gyeon spots Chi Seong waiting with a rifle. He quickly warns everyone to take cover. What follows is another intense firefight, as Joe and Park Gyeon are attacked from multiple directions by Chi Seong and his men. With limited ammunition, they struggle to find a way to fight back. Then from a distance, Im arrives and opens fire, helping to relieve some of the pressure. Each of them takes a moment to reload, preparing for one final push. Joe and Park Ji-yeon plan to take turns attacking, but first they need to eliminate the remaining men behind Chi Seong. As they move into position, Joe suddenly realizes that Chi Seong is about to shoot the women. Without hesitation, he throws himself forward and takes the hit. Somehow he manages to survive and quickly reloads his weapon. Now Joe, Park Gaeon, and Im regroup, hiding and planning their next move. At this point, only Chi Seong remains. In a tense moment, Im suddenly points her gun, thinking Park Gaeon is aiming at her. But in reality, Park Gaeon is protecting her as Chi Seong is about to fire. The shot hits Park Gaeon, but even then, he refuses to give up before finishing this. Through the pain, Park Gaeon signals that he is going to move in closer to take Chi Seong down. Joe tries to stop him, knowing how risky it is with their limited ammo. Still, Park Gaeon pushes forward, bleeding heavily as he moves closer. Unfortunately, the trail of blood gives away his position. Quickly, Park Gaeon takes cover inside a car, waiting for the right moment. Chi Seong approaches, but stays outside, keeping his distance. In the chaos that follows, all three of them are hit by gunfire. Even so, Joe refuses to give up. He pushes through the pain and manages to take Chi Seong down once and for all. With the fight finally over, Joe rushes to Park Gaeon's side, trying to keep him conscious. He tells him to hold on, reminding him that the criminals have been defeated. Joe tries to carry him to safety, but Park Gaeon already knows he does not have much time left. In his final moments, he entrusts Joe with one last request: to always protect Seo-hwa. Seo-hwa comes closer, staying by Park Gaeon's side until the very end. She cannot hold back her emotions, completely overwhelmed as she watches him fade away right in front of her. She is left speechless, becoming his final source of comfort before he finally passes. Not long after, Joe reports on the entire operation. The mission is declared a success, as both the human trafficking network and the drug distribution have been exposed. However, Joe faces doubt from others because he chose to save a North Korean woman, even going as far as offering her a chance at a new nationality. But for Joe, the answer is simple. Everyone deserves to be saved no matter where they come from. In the end, Joe continues to keep an eye on Seo-hwa from afar. She has chosen to start a new life in Europe, continuing her studies and moving forward. Joe remains committed to the promise he made to Park Ji-yeon. Through everything that has happened, he comes to a clear realization. No matter the country, the conflict, or the ideology, saving a life will always be the right choice. So the moral of the story is, never trust a guy who says, this route is safer. Never underestimate a waitress. And if two secret agents both love the same girl, a lot of people are definitely about to get punched.